Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the multi-mini interview, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips and tell you about my experience when I was doing it. First of all, I want to tell you that this interview style or system only occurs in certain universities. You have to check what kind of interview style your university actually has, and you can study according to that. So I had the multi-mini interview at Deakin University, and unfortunately I'm unable to give you any of the exact scenarios that I had because I'm legally bound by law. I had to sign a document before I entered the interview rooms saying that I will not disclose any of the scenarios, which is really, I don't know, it was unfair for Deakin students because all of the other universities in Australia had example questions out there. All the students had discussed them, put them on discussion boards, and all of them had access to these questions, whereas all the Deakin students had nowhere to turn to. They had no clue what was going on because we had no sample questions. I wanted to talk to you about the multi-mini interview. What it consists of is several stations. I had 10 stations in total, 8 minutes each. You get 2 minutes reading time, 2 minutes reading time and 6 minutes with the examiner or the interviewer, if I am not mistaken. What happens is you are escorted to an interview room. You stand outside the interview room, feel a little nervous and shaky, and stare around at all the other students for a while until the bell rings. Then you're asked to enter the room and sit down at the table in the corner, which is far away from the examiner, who is on the other side of the room. Sit down, read your card that they give you, and it has a scenario on it. And in your mind you've got to quickly think of points and things to talk about. And when that 2 minutes is up, a bell will ring, and you've got to walk over to the interviewer on the other side of the room, say, "Hi, my name is," insert your name there, shake their hand, smile brightly, and sit down. They will ask you a question. Unless the scenario is an actual question itself, then you've got to start talking yourself. The interviewer will only give you cues when they feel that it is necessary and when they feel that you really need it. So really the interviewer is sitting there just listening to you talk unless you have a problem. Then they will ask questions. If you don't address the actual question, they will ask you questions. So it's not as if they're going to leave you there in the lurch. They're quite friendly, and they do smile once in a while. I'll tell you a bit about my experience later, but so that's what you need to do. And after 6 minutes, another bell will ring, and you move on to the next station, and it happens again. See, some people don't manage to talk throughout the entire 6 minutes, which makes it awkward because you're sitting there in silence, or you start talking about other things and not the actual scenario, which kind of breaks the ice, but it also makes you nervous because you're not entirely sure whether you are being marked on what you say at that moment in time. So stick with the question. That's my advice. And if you have nothing more to say on the matter, then just tell the interviewer. If the interviewer asks you a question but you don't know how to answer it, my advice is just to say, "I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this question." I think it's the most honest way that you can answer, because the interviewers will know if you're waffling on and if you're trying to make up things and you're not really sure. My experience tells me that this is the best way, because even though I felt horrible for saying, "I'm sorry, I don't know," I realized that it was probably the best thing that I could have said, because if I started talking about random things that I wasn't sure about, then I would have looked like a complete fool, I think. It just shows that you are honest. So the interview repeats itself, except with different scenarios, obviously. There are different varieties of scenarios. For example, you may have an actor in yours who acts as a patient. You may be the patient's friend, you may be the patient's doctor. You've got to be able to deal with their issues. For example, the patient is crying over receiving bad news about their condition, and you as their friend or their doctor have to act empathetic towards them. So you've got to act in such a way that you address all the patient's concerns and you address the fact that they are upset over the situation, and the examiner is sitting in the corner of the room, or the interviewer actually is sitting in the corner of the room, just observing how you interact with this patient. Some people were having difficulty with this particular scenario, so they felt that it was a bit intimidating to have a patient crying in the same room as you, like they didn't know how to react. But other people were okay with it, they knew how to deal with it because they probably dealt with it before. So I think you've just got to follow your instinct. If you see someone crying, if you see someone upset, just make sure you know what to do. Make sure you say appropriate things, and don't over reassure them. Like, don't say, oh, everything will be fine, don't worry, calm down. Never ever say calm down, because that would make the patient even more distressed that you are not addressing how they feel. Let me see what else. There are scenarios that talk about yourself, so your own personality traits and just your goals and your aspirations, as well as resource allocation. That was the most important thing, resource allocation. So if you had a sum of money and you had 2 organizations or 3 organizations that you had the opportunity to give that money to in society, which one would you give it to and why? And they will challenge your point of view, and make sure you stick with your point of view. Even though they try to challenge you, make sure you stick with it, because that's very important to know that you can stand by your own opinion and not be swayed by other people's opinion like this. What other ones are there? Oh my goodness, I cannot remember. It felt like it was 5 years ago, but it was actually only 2 years ago. Let me see. The interview goes by really quickly, and even though you're really nervous during the interview, and you at the end of the interview you feel like, oh my gosh, I've failed this station, that station, that station, just move on. That's the most important thing. If you felt like you did badly in one station, you can always start afresh in the next one. That's the best thing about multi-mini interviews. If you have this type of interview system, it is fantastic, because you can always refresh and start again. You've got 10 chances. It's not like you're sitting in front of a panel of 3 or 4 examiners or interviewers and they've already made an impression of you in the first sentence that you've spoken. That's the worst, I reckon. You're sitting there for hours and hours and they've already made a bad impression of you. This is the best way. So MMIs are the best interviews. My opinion, of course. Other people may beg to differ, because they feel like, the interviewers can't build a rapport with you in such a short period of time. But the thing is, I think they can. People judge other people better than we think they do. So if you do have the MMI, congratulations. And take advantage of the fact that you do have it. Practice these little interviews with your friends. See if you can find any other universities that have the MMI. If you're going to Deakin, I know there aren't any questions out there for you guys, but you can practice with other universities' questions, I think. Anyway, I hope I helped you. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment below. Feel free to ask me anything or private message me. I'll be very happy to help you out. See you next time. Bye.